He was awake as Dr. Zhou Tao Xiang operated him to give him a corneal transplant. They had deadened the nerves around his eye, but he could hear the metallic instruments clanking and Dr. Chu speaking. His right eye had been inflamed and swollen for more than 3 years. When he checked into Taiwan's Tri-Service General Hospital in Taipei, he could hardly see out of it, and his left eye severely hyperopic. Doctors discovered that he was suffering from keratitis, an inflammation of the cornea.
You could have picked it up from towels or from swimming pools.
I am a swimming instructor at an army officer's.
That's probably how you caught it.
About a year later, he learned that a corneal transplant could restore sight to his blind eye. When he told his wife, she brought out her savings deposit book. She had managed to save some $500 after years of hard work.
If this isn't enough, we'll try to get more. You're not like me. An illiterate person is blind though he can see. A man who can read needs both eyes.
He put his list on Dr. Chu's waiting list. A month later, he phoned him.
A driver was involved in a bad car accident. Before he died, he told his wife to sell parts of his body to help support their children. Could you spare $250?
The operation and the hospital expenses could come to further $200, and I have enough money. I'll tell my wife then.
As he was being wheeled out of the operating room, his daughter Young put her lips close to his ears.
Everything went well. Mother wanted to come but she was afraid.
He was 19 when he married on his parents' order. His father and his wife's father were close friends and had pledged that if their wives gave birth to a boy and a girl, their children should be married. He had never set eyes on the girl who was to be his wife until the day she was carried to their house in a bridal sedan chair. After bowing to heaven and earth, she was led to his bedroom. When at last he lifted the red brocade of her bridal headdress, he gasped with horror. Her face was cruelly covered with pockmarks, her nose was deformity, and beneath sparse eyebrows, her scarred eyelids made her eyes seem swollen. She was 19, and yet looked 40. He fled to his mother's room and cried all night.
You must accept your fate. Homely girls bring back good luck. Pretty ones court sorrow.
Nothing can reduce my anguish. I would not have shared a room with my wife, and I would not speak.
He lodged at school. When summer vacation came, he refused to come home until his father sent his cousin to fetch him. His wife was cooking supper when he arrived, and raised her head in a smile when she saw him. He walked right past her. After supper, my mother spoke privately.
Son, you are being cruel. Her face is unattractive, but she does not have an ugly heart. She is an extremely good girl, understanding and considerate. She has been in this house for more than 6 months now, and works from morning to night in the kitchen and at the mill. She has not uttered a word of complaint about the way you have treated her. I have not seen her shed a tear, but she is shedding them inside. Do you want her to live a widow although she has a husband? Put yourself in her place.
In the 30 years of marriage that followed, he seldom smiled at his wife and never went out in her company. Indeed, he often wished her dead. And yet, his wife proved to be endowed with more patience and love than anyone he knew. When they first came to Taiwan, he held a low rank in the army, and his income was barely enough to pay the rent and food. The baby was often ill, and they had to cope with the medical expenses as well. When his wife was not looking after the household, she wove the straw hats and mats to earn a little money. When they moved to a fishing harbor in the east, she darned fishing nets, and when they moved north, she learned to paint designs on pottery. They never lived in army quarters because the truth was both feared her meeting people he knows. He was often away from home, but he knew that he needn't worry about their 2 children or the household, with her looking after everything. After the operation, his daughter Jung brought him a transistor radio to occupy the long hours while the bandage remained on his eyes. But he had plenty of time to think, and his thoughts kept returning to his wife. He was somewhat ashamed for telling her not to come to see him. After 2 weeks, he learned that the stitches would soon be removed. He could not contain his happiness.
I want to pay a visit to the grave of the man who gave me his cornea. But I was nervous, for I knew there was a chance that the transplant would not succeed.
When they removed the bandage from his right eye, he scarcely dared open it.
Do you see any light? Yes, that's the lamp. It's a success. You can go home a week from today.
During the week, Dr. Chu tested his eyes every day. First, he could see the shadows and number of fingers on his hands. On the day he was going home, he could see the windows, the bed, and even teacups on a table. He and Jung climbed into a taxi. Jung was strangely silent all the way home. As he walked into the house, his wife was coming from the kitchen with a plate of food. When she saw him, she lowered her head immediately.
You're back!
Thank you for letting me see.
It is enough to hear you say this. I have not lived in vain.
Jung burst into the room in tears.
Tell him. Let father know that you gave the cornea for his eyes. Tell him.
I only did what I could.
He grabbed her by the shoulders and looked closely at her face. Her left iris was opaque, as his right one had been.
Golden flower! Why? Why did you do it?
Because you are my husband.
She said, burying her head in my shoulder. He held her tight. Then he got down and knelt at her feet.